Hi, welcome everyone. Everyone's just joining now, so we'll just give it a few minutes. Oh, someone from Bristol, that's where I'm based. Hello, it's a bit overcast today in Bristol. We're just giving you all a chance to come in and join us. We'll give it a few more seconds. We've got a lot to cover in this session, so we are going to get going on time. Very grey in Bristol, yes, I can agree with that. Colette, where are you?
Yeah, I'm in the Midlands, so I'm Silverstone, so we're gearing up for the Grand Prix this weekend. So yeah, very grey and dismal here, but set to be very busy coming next few days.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Lots of visitors into the village very soon.
Cool. Well, let's get going. So we've got 1 minute past. I know we've got a lot of people joining the session today, so everyone's really welcome. So let me just do some introductions as everyone's joining. So let me just move this on. Here we go. So yeah, welcome to the session today. We're really delighted you can join us wherever you are. So my name is Orla Power, and I design and deliver our Elevating Women in Leadership programs. And I'm also joined by Colette Andrew Arthur, my colleague, and we'll be hosting and taking you through these 4 sessions that we're going to be running over these 4 weeks. So you might be joining us for one, or you're very welcome to join for all of them, whichever one's relevant for you. So we're going to be covering, so today we're looking at career activism. Then we'll be looking at strengthening confidence and resilience, leading with impact and brand, and adding strategic value. So hopefully you'll find something from each of these sessions, but you're very welcome to join, as I say, one or all of them. So today we're going to be focusing on our programme, our Elevating Women in Leadership programme, and explain how we deliver that programme. But we also want to make sure that we give you lots of insights and development for yourself. So as much as we can in the next 50 minutes. So as I say, it's jam-packed from Colette and myself. So we're going to give you the overview of our programme and some of the research we've done and how that leads to what we're doing, but also some development for you as a takeaway for yourselves. And you should have received a worksheet. If not, I'm going to ask Ugne is in the background helping us today. So I'm going to ask Ugne to post it in the chat so you can pick it up from there. So we've got a worksheet for you to use afterwards. So we're not sharing the slides, but the points we cover are all in the worksheet. And we're also going to send you afterwards our ebook and research report. So everything Colette and I discussed today, you will be getting in one form or another. And as I say, hopefully for those of you who are joining today to get some development for yourselves, you can look at and reflect on. We really want to encourage you, for those joining for your development, to find a bud to talk through what comes up in the session. Or better, if you know several of you are joining from one organisation, get a group together so you can share what we've been talking about and start maybe your own development group. So please feel free to share the sorts of things that we're talking about with others and get the conversation going. If anyone wants to buddy with someone that they don't know, maybe from this session, I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to try it, but you can email on ewil@lhh.com. So if you'd like to pair up with someone else on this session, then just drop us a line and we'll see if we can do a matching service if you would like to buddy up. So we'll offer you that as something that will help you with. And we're on a webinar format today, so we've got a really large take up. So we know that this topic is really popular. So we're not going to be able to do our normal breakouts, but we will be using polls and chat. So get ready. And we're aiming to complete within about 50 minutes or so that you can have a bit of a refresh. And Colette and I will stay on in case there are any questions in terms of Q&A. Okay, let's get going. So I did want to start off by saying that we believe that development programs for women are a really important lever in inclusivity and levelling that playing field. But on their own, they're not likely to solve the issue of greater diversity at senior levels. but combined with creating that more inclusive culture and having some positive practices that support women in advancing, and together with these development programs. So all of these three areas combined, likely to get that greater likelihood of success. And we know, and this is from independent analysis, that well, our women in leadership programs have an impact in three areas, but generally women in leadership programs have an impact in promotions. So participants of the program are more likely to be promoted. And that's when compared to women who didn't have any development. So even coming today and starting that process for yourself and having that interest and curiosity is really starting you on that path. But when participants and then non-participants were interviewed, there was a very definite difference in terms of those that were progressing their careers. We also know that retention rates are higher for those women who have attended women in leadership development programs. And interestingly, the number of lateral moves increased. So we get this higher movement sideways. And that's really important because one of the headwinds that hold women back is often their confidence comes from a deep expertise in a particular area. I talk about being capital I-shaped, and actually we need to be capital T-shaped and have that breadth across the business. So we often see lateral moves before then moving upwards. So lateral moves are just as important, and Colette's going to talk about that a little bit later. So from our LHH research, we do also believe that men and women should attend general leadership development. So there's leadership development for everyone, so the broad discipline of leadership development, but women's development programs should be complementary to that, and they should focus on a top-up on key areas that are most relevant to women. And these are the areas that you'll see in the research report when you get it, are the areas that we identified are the areas to be focused on. Okay, so there were 12 behaviours of women who were successful in advancing their careers that are really good to focus on. So from these 12 areas, we've developed a number of specific developments that really focus. They can be summarized in these 4 areas. So this is why we've got these 4 taster sessions. So we've got career activism, confidence and resilience, impact and brand, and then adding that strategic value. So these are the 4 taster sessions that we're going to take you on that developmental journey, and we'll share as much as we can. So let me just show you, so you can orientate yourself. Let me just show you our development program and where we're going to be focusing today. So our programs start with some form of launch. So at its simplest, it would be an invitation and information about the program. It could also be a recording from the facilitators or a one-to-one coaching session or a bigger event if there's lots of cohorts starting at the same time. But at its heart, it's really about the organisation demonstrating that sponsorship and saying why it's important to be running these sorts of programmes. We also recommend that participants of line managers are briefed and onboarded, preferably through a live webinar, but it could be a recording. And I'll come back to that at the end of the session today to talk more about that line manager involvement. For each of the participants, there'll be a bit of pre-work and then their virtual workshop. And then this is followed by a discovery session. So these are smaller group sessions which enable the participants to share those specific challenges and receive coaching. So this is why I'm encouraging you to get a buddy so that anything that comes up for you on this session today, you can have that discussion with someone else. We also use an assessment. I'll talk more about that at the next session. So each of the workshops have a bit of pre-work, a workshop, and then a discovery session. And these first 3 workshops would be for sort of mid-level managers, and then there's an additional workshop for more senior managers. So today we're starting here with career activism. So let's get going. I just wanted to show you that so you can see where you are on the programme journey. So we're going to start with career activism, and we're going to look at what that is. We're going to look at some of the headwinds and share some tools to help you with your career planning. So that's the aim of this session. So of course, we've got loads of people joining us today. We're really delighted about that. And Colette and I would love to get to know all of you, but just to get us in the mood and get us started, let's just start with a chat activity. So thinking about careers then, we thought this would be a fun one to start with. So just pop in the chat, when I grow up, I want to be. So what did you want to be when you grew up? So Colette, just get, what did you want to be when you
I was a primary school teacher.
Mine was well, I said to my mum I wanted to be a belly dancer, but she thought I said ballet dancer.
Amazing.
Laugh about that a few years later.
Somewhat different.
A bit of a difference. Oh yeah, lovely. So there's lots of teachers coming up. Fighter pilot,
mountain climber, artist. No idea.
And then dancer, lots of vets I could see. Astronaut. A nun, yes. Astronaut, lovely. Lovely. So yeah, interesting, isn't it, that all of the things that we thought, and some of us may well have, I mean, I can't say my ballet's up to much, but some of us may well have got involved in some of those careers. But we rarely end up in the job or career we envisage, especially perhaps that far back. And in fact, careers these days are rarely linear. So even this diagram is out of date. You know, there's a wide range of options to arrive as close as possible to that destination, whatever it is. And we might not even know what destination B is. So, but we, you know, there's a whole variety of different permutations and combinations on that career journey. So why career planning as a topic? Well, one of the factors for women who are successful in progressing their careers that we saw from our research is a clear shared career plan. So a potential headwind for women is that we tend to think short term about the next job or opportunity rather than long term about what our careers are building towards and what opportunity we take is building towards. So this can result in us having a sort of helter-skelter or wiggly career, or a sense of feeling stuck, or just not being in the driving seat of your career. So if any of those resonate with you, it's a really good idea to start thinking about that. And one of the activities we get participants to do later is reflect on their careers to date and identify how and why they have made those career transitions, and whether this sort of short-term focus is true for them. So in this session, we're going to be encouraging you to think about that and also think a little bit further out in terms of our careers. So I'm going to hand over to Colette to talk to us about being career active.
Yeah, of course. And I love, there's a comment there in the chat from Sally Humphreys, just sharing that at 50 years old, she still doesn't know what she wants to be when she grows up, which I thought was fantastic. So thanks for sharing that, Sally.
I love that. And we'll mention that you're in experimental phase, that experimenting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is good as well.
All right, great. Thanks, Orla. Thanks for that. So I suppose what we want to really think about is really how do we sort of focus on our careers in a more active way. And I guess, you know, so many of us will be able to kind of raise our hands if I was to ask how many of us at one time or another may have asked ourselves the question of, you know, why did they get that promotion, or how were they spotted for that opportunity? And often, you know, we will tell ourselves that if we work really hard and we do a really good job, then somebody will notice that and reward that with advancement. But of course, we know that that's not necessarily the case. You know, it may well get noticed and it may well get us a sense of achievement, recognition, reward, but we know that it doesn't always then lead to that advancement for us. And so what we talk about on the programme is career activism, and we explore programme is career activism, and we explore 5 areas with a number of activities, really helping us to think through each of these ways in which we can manage our careers. So we're going to start with networking as the first area. And our research that Orla has already referred to has found that women who were successful in advancing to senior levels did have stronger networks than those who were less successful. So think about whether any of these perhaps relate to your own network as I run through them. And we're going to do a short poll in just a moment to get a sense of where you are. So women tend to be under-mentored or sponsored. Women prefer to network with their own gender. And of course, as we talk about women progressing to more senior levels, that can start to be a challenge if there are fewer women to network with. Women tend to have better organisational networks down through the organisation or across, and lack those more senior sponsors and connections. And women tend to be more givers than takers of their network, and so will avoid making those asks of their network themselves. So Ugne, if I may, could I get you just to run the poll in relation to these areas? So which of these do you relate to? Being under-mentored, preferring to network with your own gender, maybe your network lacks influential or senior connections, maybe you're avoiding making asks. So overall, what we're saying is that women tend to have smaller networks and closer relationships, and so hence why strategic networking is an area for us to focus on, and we're going to look at that in just a moment. Okay, we will close the poll there or thereabouts, just in the interest of time. Fantastic, yeah, so a spread across those, but certainly the majority of you almost avoiding to making asks of your network, quite a significant proportion being under-mentored, and feeling that you maybe lack those senior connections. So a lot of similarity there to our research and what we have found. Okay, so as you think about your own network, as we go through the next few slides, think about what your network currently looks like. Where do you have the most contacts? Where do you have the most gaps? So ask yourself perhaps whether you have people in your network who can help you understand the political landscape. And we're going to talk about politics in a moment. And by this, we're really referring to the current mood music, what's hot and what's not in the organisation. Who in your strategic network could speak highly of you to those higher up? And here we're really talking about people who can speak to the value that you add and therefore reference you and mention you in the right places. Who in your network can increase your visibility higher up through the organisation? So invite you into meetings, pull you into different projects that can then increase your visibility. And finally, as you think about your network, who knows what your career aspirations are and therefore in a position to keep their antennae sort of out for spotting those opportunities that are going to really play to those aspirations. And hence, of course, we've talked about the importance of sharing that career plan with our network. So when you examine your strategic network, we're really asking you to reflect on whether your network is broad. So does it have a diversity of connections within that? And we know from research that when we're left to our own devices, we do tend to create convenience networks. And by that, we're referring to people who really are just like me. So we tend to network with people that share similar interests and are very similar to ourselves. And so we might lack that diversity and breadth of ideas, ways of thinking about things. And of course, as we're trying to get to the next level, that may not always be in our interest. Secondly, we want to question whether our networks are connective. So are we connecting through others' networks? So a good way to sort of think about this is how many of your connections have you made perhaps through your manager's network, for example? So are you connected one beyond your immediate circle? And are you a connector yourself? So are you allowing people to connect through your own network and making those introductions for people within your network? And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, is it dynamic? So is it changing and growing as the organisation changes, as the industry changes, and as you grow and change? So not year after year seeking the same advice, connections from the same people. And of course, this can very quickly get tested, as Orla and I both found out when our organisation went through a significant reorganisation. And of course, that meant that our strategic network all but vanished overnight, and we were left having to obviously rebuild those connections very quickly, because people had moved on, moved up and moved out, and so we were left needing to really put a lot more effort back into this. So hopefully we're energizing you to think about your network and go away and really kind of put quite a lot of effort into this area. And it's something that we do obviously on the programme. And so at this point on the programme, not for today, but we would be really energising them to spend some time thinking about the strategic network and do some activities around that. And one of them would have them in groups go off into a breakout area to think about what their current network looks like. And they'd reflect on how they might improve that. So where are the gaps and what might work for them in that area. So I'm going to hand over to Orla now to pick up on the second area, which is politics.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Colette. And yeah, as soon as that word's mentioned, organisational politics, so it can be a bit of a controversial topic. So just notice your reaction to that as it was mentioned. But what do I mean by political awareness? So we're talking about navigating the dynamics of power or the hierarchy in your organisation. So that organisational structure and how decisions are made in order that you can achieve your goals, whatever those may be. And organisational politics can be a headwind for women. So we typically see it as something to avoid, that it's inauthentic. And because of this discomfort, we sometimes don't focus on incorporating those political behaviours into our leadership repertoire. So just reflect for a moment. Is it something that you think about and focus on developing? So I'm going to get you to, again, in the chat, this is just one dimension. So there is a bit of pre-work that people complete where they self-assess themselves. So I'm just going to ask you, if you're brave enough to give yourself a rating, give yourself A, B or C in the chat if you'd like to, and we'll see where people are. Are you at the lower end of political savvy? Do you avoid it if you can? Somewhere in the middle, it depends.
Lots of middling, lots of B's,
or is it
something A's and C's coming through, but lots of B's.
Well, yeah, it's great. Okay, B's good, B's good. Room for doing more.
C's in there, fantastic.
Yeah, if you're more at the A end, then hopefully we're inspiring you to start to think about this, because you know, that aversion to politics can limit women's progression into leadership, because the higher up the career ladder you go, the greater the need for influencing. And of course, when I say influencing, people find that that's a little bit more palatable, a bit more acceptable. But it does require us, I'm going to use the phrase, be politically savvy. Okay, so being aware. And what we do know from our LHH research is that women who have that political savvy or that political agility are more likely to be successful in progressing their careers. And that's because they've figured out what relationships are important to build on and how things get done in your organisation. So if you're thinking that this is an area that you might need to develop in, let's just break it down, because when we use that whole term, it can conjure up a lot of different things for different people. So if we focus on these 4 areas, perhaps these will be a bit more familiar to you and things that you could start to actually do to improve that political savvy. So this is all about, one element would be knowing what and how things get done around here. So hone your powers of perception, you know, watch, learn from others about what's valued and how things get done. I was just thinking of an example, and just this week I saw one of, someone senior in our business. He's only, well, I suppose they've only been at LHH about a year, but they regularly send out really detailed long slide packs to our sales team to get them to focus on certain things. Now, I've been at LHH 20 years plus, and I know what works, and this is from watching and observing and learning, that with our sales team, they just want one slide, mainly a picture, and no more than a few words. So that's what I've observed. So that's what I'm talking about, recognizing, watching, knowing what and how things get done. And then, as Colette was mentioning, think about the strategic alliances. So this is about understanding who has power and who you need to create and maintain relationships with to achieve your goals. So it's linked to that strategic networking that Colette has been talking about. And really practice your influencing. Become highly aware of your influencing style. We're going to come back to this on the impact and brand session when we look at that around influencing. And then choosing your battles wisely. So this is about a delicate balance. So you want to be seen as a leader who's going to step up and stand for those things that are right, to show that you have that conviction and purpose, but it's also balanced with compromise. So this is really about thinking before we speak. So politically skilled leaders have that impulse control. So they tend to choose their organizational battles wisely, and they size up those situations before deciding how to present their ideas to others. And they consider whether or not to voice that thought or feeling. And they're thoughtful about the timing and presentation of what they have to say. And then the last area is around that credibility and authenticity. So knowing what your reputation is and ensuring you're seen as someone who's credible and authentic. And if you want to check out your reputation, we're going to be doing a bit more on this, as I say, on impact and brand, but an activity you could start now, and I'll mention it again at the next session, but just ask a range of people for 5 words that best describe you. So just off the top of their heads. And that'll give you a sense. And if you like it, great. If you don't, you could start doing something about it. I did this a few years ago and I was happy with most of it, except one word came back as low maintenance. So I was seen as someone who was helpful and got the job done well. But I wanted to work on changing that. So whenever I was given work, I asked more questions about how it linked to the bigger picture. I thought about how I could achieve more than was expected, how I could increase the visibility of what I was working on and the results. And I changed that reputation of low maintenance to strategic. So that's what I was aiming for. And we'll cover more on that on the 4th session. So just think about, what are your political savvy strengths to build on, and what challenges you? And are there some gaps that you might need to focus on? Lovely. Over to you, Colette.
Great, thank you. All right, so then one of the other areas that we move on to think about is manager. And so as we think about this, how much do you know about what is important to your manager in order for them to be successful themselves? Perhaps think about how they're measured, how they're rewarded, what is their reputation? Ollie's just talked about brand and profile. What is the reputation and brand that your manager has within the organization, and what motivates them? And so just for a minute, consider whether you could list 5 things your manager likes and 5 things that your manager doesn't like, quickly off the top of your head. And if you're struggling to do that, if you're thinking that that actually is quite difficult for you, then clearly there's an area for focus on in this regard, because the more you know in how to enable your manager to be successful, obviously the better for you. And if we move on then to think about how this links to expectations, we get the group to think about expectations of them. So universal expectations, often these are the standards of behaviour, perhaps cultural expectations, and really it's the language of the organisation to you. So this is what we expect of you in order to be successful here. Role expectations, perhaps the most clearly defined for most of us, is what you need to do in your role to achieve and to be successful. So these are the more traditional and obvious expectations on us. And then we get to niche expectations. So these are really the above and beyond. So these niche expectations are those personal standards, the little things that are important perhaps to your manager in the way that they like things to be done, and they may not really be aware of them consciously. So these may have developed over time, and they may be intuitive to the individual manager, but may not be obvious to everybody else. So it's really about paying attention to understanding what those niche expectations are and putting that knowledge into action in every interaction, so that it enhances how you're viewed by them in the interactions that you have. Okay. So lots of manager likes and dislikes going on in the chat. I'm going to ask
There's
you
a nice example, Colette, in the chat.
Do you want to call it out for me, Orla? I haven't seen it. Yes.
Oh, yes, I was just saying that there was one there about the manager likes flexibility, likes to be kept in the loop. That would be a niche expectation. And then someone said we have niche expectations of others as well. So yeah.
Absolutely, yes, spot on. And I can see now there's some others in there about being too emotional, unorganized. Yeah, absolutely. So some great ones in there. So I'm going to ask you to refocus now, because we're going to look at profile. So I'm going to ask you to use the chat to perhaps highlight something that you're proud of from this week. We're only Monday, so perhaps you want to cast your mind back to last week, something that maybe you achieved, maybe something that you're particularly proud of in work terms. Yeah, give you a couple of moments to do that. And as you're doing that, think about whether you perhaps actively manage your profile and reputation. It can feel quite inauthentic for some women to promote themselves positively and tend to play down their achievements or brush off positive feedback that they receive. And as I asked you to perhaps pop into the chat things that you're proud of, notice how that felt to you. Perhaps for some of you that maybe made you feel a bit cringe, maybe it made you sort of jar a little bit. For some of you, it may not have done it, and that's great. But if it did, notice that. And what does that therefore mean about the effort and the emphasis you place on actively managing your profile and reputation? There is a deeper dive on self-advocacy and managing our profile on the impact and brand session. So Orla, I'm going to hand back to you now just to wrap up those 5 key areas.
Yeah, there's some lovely ones coming in on the chat, so well done for sharing those. Some amazing achievements, both sort of personal ones, and then some of them are outside of work. So someone's sold some artwork, someone's
the one that I loved
been recognized.
There was one just there, all I have to call out, which is joining this session. I wouldn't normally do something like this and put myself out there. So whoever that, I didn't see the name, it flashed by me very quickly, but fantastic. Well done.
Yeah, well done. And yeah, investing in yourself and being selfish and taking that time. Well done. Yeah, absolutely. So I know it's been a bit of a whistle stop tour through these, and obviously, we'd love to take a deeper dive, but we've popped things on the workshop, but we'd love to just poll just to see from this group very quickly, which of these areas do you think that you might need to be more active? So Ugne, if you launch that poll, just so that we can get a sense from everyone that's joined today, which of these are you now starting to think, oh yes, I could do with focusing a bit more on this particular area? And as I say, we've put it on your worksheet and the things that we've talked about as a prompt and a reminder, so that you can take that away and reflect on it and maybe chat it through with your buddy. But it'd be interesting to see overall. So I can see straight away the one that's ahead, Colette, is managing your profile and promoting yourself. Yeah. So for those of you who want to, that's on our session 3. We're going to look at impact and brand. So that would be a great one if you want to come to that one. And then developing a more strategic network. That's quite high, and political savvy. But the piece around manager, so it looks like many of you are doing well with that, and that's an area that you're focusing on, understanding your manager, and then what expectations they might have of you that aren't always obvious. So those more sort of niche expectations that you might need to notice or question. Ugne, let's just close that poll because I think that's settled down, and just publish that so everyone can see the results for themselves. So there we go. Yeah, 73% of you, it's about managing your profile and promoting yourself, and then developing a more strategic network. So we're going to encourage you to take those that thinking away, and as I say, start to discuss that with others and think about what actions you can take in each of these areas. Lovely. So that's an overview of those 5 areas to connect. So in real life, if we were on the workshop, this would be the morning finished, and it would have taken us up to lunchtime. So we'd be exploring all of that in the first half of a workshop. So then after, so we take a break, an hour for lunch, everyone gets away from the screen if we're delivering it virtually. And then after lunch, we're starting to turn our attention then. So in the morning, we've looked at what do we need to be career active. And then in the afternoon, we're starting to think about, okay, and what does career mean to me? What's important? What do I want? And what are the sorts of things that motivate me and enable me to thrive in my career? So we do get participants to complete a questionnaire as pre-work. I'm going to chat this through so you can have a chance to sort of self-assess yourself. It's Career Anchors by Edgar Schein. So if you like this, it is actually, if you wanted to do this yourself, it is actually available on Amazon. So if you just want to Google it, you can get, you can buy your own little mini assessment if you wanted to do that separately. But let me just tell you a little bit about it. So as I say, Career Anchors were developed by an American academic, Edgar Schein, who researched the underlying themes that underpin career choice. So why we choose the careers we choose. And those differences in career anchors help to explain why some people with maybe a similar background, similar education, similar professional training might make very different career choices. So I don't know if you can think about, maybe there's a group of you that join the organisation all at once and everyone's gone off in different directions because they've made different career choices. So let's just think about, for example, if we take engineers, some engineers are intrinsically interested in their profession. So they're enjoying the challenge of resolving those complex technical problems. So whatever industry you're in, maybe you like that sort of technical challenge. Others see their profession as a step towards management. So they're happy to leave the technical problems to others. Others quickly set up their own businesses, so or want to take responsibility in a particular area. So they're looking to create their own enterprise and to make a distinctive mark on the world. So they're more entrepreneurial. Some of us are more motivated, and I'm including myself in this because this is one of my career anchors, are more motivated by freedom and flexibility, so that autonomy. Others by security, so wanting financial or employment stability. Or maybe it's about being service to others or having dedication to a cause. Some people just thrive on pure challenge, so it doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you've got that novelty, that variety, that stretch. If it's too easy, you get bored and lose interest. And then if your career anchor is lifestyle, what you would not give up is a situation that permits you to balance your personal needs, family needs, and your career. So for people with that lifestyle career anchor, you want to make all of the sectors of your life work together as an integrated whole. And of course, we'd all say we want that, but for people with that career anchor, it's the most important driving force. So they would give up a career or an opportunity if it didn't always create that balance. So that difference is due to your career anchor. It's that underlying drive or combination of drives that motivates each person to make one choice or another. So knowing your career anchor really helps you think about your career choices now and of course in the future. So from the descriptions I'm given, I'm going to give you a chance to sort of guess, which of those appeal to you or do you think are really important to you? So Ugne, if you launch the poll, and we're going to get you to, let's see what we've got as a group here. around career anchors. So what was the one that jumped out at you that you thought, yeah, that's probably my career anchor? So have a little go at that one. So as I say, on the programme, we get people to complete a sort of self-assessment questionnaire, which will help them hone that down. But usually there's a really good spread across all of these. So you'd expect to see, particularly in a large group like this, a good range of different career anchors reflected. So I can see you all making your choices. Oh, there is one that's coming out as a strong career anchor. Okay, so some people are saying that there's, I might have had different career anchors at different times in my life. Yeah, and when you combine that with your values as well, that can also give you some sort of greater insight. Okay, I think that's most of you. So Ugne, if you want to just publish that. Lovely, I think that's come up. So yes, the stretch has come out as quite a significant one in this group, so 29% of you. And having freedom and autonomy, job security, and then we've got a few on the technical expertise and general management, and then being of service to others and being entrepreneurial. Okay, and as I say, it's really about what's important to you and what enables you to thrive, what you want to get from your career itself. So we ask people to reflect on this. We also get them to create a career lifeline. So I've put both of these on the worksheet for you to think about. If you haven't done this before or not done it for a while, it's a really useful activity to reflect on what you can learn from the highs and lows of your career journey. So on the programme, we set up buddy discussions, so on the career anchor and the career lifeline. So what do these sorts of things tell you about the right career choices for you? And if we're running a virtual programme, we send people away from the screens to do that as a walk and talk, and really start to draw out what are some of the learnings when you reflect back. So as I say, we've popped it on the worksheet for you to do. So this could be an activity that you do with a buddy, with a colleague, to really reflect on your career journey. And what is that telling you about when you made moves, why you made moves, and what are the jobs or roles that you've really thrived in and felt most energized, and then most likely to be close to your career anchor and those things that are important to you. And of course, it's really important to know those as we make choices going forwards. And talking of choices, let's look at career options. So I'll hand over to Colette.
Of course. All right. So for the last part of the session, we get participants to really think about their career longer term. So where are they heading and what are you building towards? And so it might not be, as Orla says, you know, a clear destination, but it might be a rough direction, even just kind of having a general idea as to what that might look like is important. So we explore different career options, and it's not always about that vertical move upwards. It might be, but of course it might be about others. And so we talk about lateral moves. We might move across the organisation in order to broaden your experience, and Orla talked about that capital T shaped earlier. So getting that breadth might require a lateral move. We talk about enriching. So this might be deepening or expanding your responsibilities in your current role, maybe mastering new skills, but enriching the current role that you're in. Exploration then is another area that we talk about. So this is about perhaps collecting information, researching both internal and external opportunities. And that might require, you know, exploring different options for skills training, but looking to build towards the next step of your career and exploring what that might look like. Then we talk about realignment. So realignment might be about changing the work that you do to fit your values. It might be about changing the amount of work where you work, perhaps realignment around work-life balance. So we saw a lot of realignment following the pandemic, with people really redressing perhaps some imbalances that had crept in over time, and the pandemic was a real moment in time where people really took the opportunity to realign to that work-life balance. And then relocation is the final one that we talk about. So it can be as obvious as, of course, relocating to a different part of the country or globally. It might be about moving company, but relocation would also encompass retirement, redundancy. So all of that would fit within this framework. And on the programme, what participants do is complete a questionnaire which helps them to identify their career option preferences and help them to discuss with a buddy what that might look like for them as they move ahead in their career. So that starts their thinking about longer term, short term, medium term, and much longer term, and start them to identify some SMART goals around that. And we come back to their career planning ideas in the discovery session that follows the module that all have referenced. So it's on your worksheet for today. So we're going to encourage you to think about how you see your career developing over the next perhaps 3 to 5 years. And perhaps in your mind, frame the question, if you really could have it all, what is the vision for your ideal career progression? What career move would you make if you knew you could not fail? And I love that question because it just puts you into a very different mindset. So if you knew you couldn't fail, what career move would you be more bold to take? And it might help you identify by asking that question, therefore, what perhaps is holding you back? What's stopping you and what's getting in the way? And what might you need to do to be able to move on from that? So as you move on from today, think about who might support you. All is identified that we might try and do some matching of buddies. You might have identified in your own mind's eye somebody or several people that you want to talk to following today's session. So think about who can support you in your thinking over the next couple of weeks. Who are the 1-2 people that might help you reach your goals? And you can seek some constructive input and feedback around in order for you to be able to start to create a career plan that you might want to therefore share more widely across the business. Okay, I'm going to hand back over to Orla.
Thanks, Colette. So just as we, as Colette said, we're coming to the end of the session, I just wanted to mention a point that I made at the beginning and really get you thinking about how you could involve your line managers, because this is a really important point as well. What conversations could you have with them and how could they support you? So at the start of our programs, we do run sessions for line managers and get them to think about what they might adapt when developing women. So if you can think of anything, pop it in the chat just as I share these with you. So when you get the research paper from us at the end of this session, you'll also see a list of behaviours of people who are champions for women in the business and what they can do. What are the behaviours that they can do to actively support? So here are some of those behaviours that you'll see in that report. So I'm just going to pop those up. And the top 5 were these ones here. So creating opportunities to network informally, giving that exposure to senior leaders and decision makers, using coaching and feedback, and challenging themselves and others around that unconscious bias. So at the start of the programme and throughout, we invite managers to think about how they are supporting women and give them a coaching toolkit. And we also invite them back at the end of the programme to hear firsthand what participants have learnt. And it's a very inspiring session. So we're going to encourage you to share today with your line manager and ask for their support as well with your career activism actions from today. So our next session is going to be on strengthening confidence and resilience. So welcome to that. So that's next Monday. And we're going to also look at take a little bit more of a deeper dive on the discovery sessions, what happens on those, and touch on strength scope and what your strengths are. And I'm going to be running that session. I'm going to be joined by Mary and Nikki. So we've got a couple of guest speakers who are going to share their insights and experiences. So we hope you found today really insightful. We'd love to know your feedback. So Ugne, if you could launch the evaluation feedback. We're going to stay on and answer some questions because I saw some Q&As come in, so we'll answer anything that comes in on that. So you should have, I've seen a bit of chat about the worksheet, so any problems, do email us and we can send that out separately. If you don't get the things that I've said, please do contact us. So you should get from today the research report. We'll send you an ebook about the headwinds. But any problems or queries, do contact us on ewill@lhh.com. Or if you wanted that buddy that I mentioned, if you wanted to try and match with someone else who's been on this session outside of your organisation, that might be a nice thing to do. We'll try and match you.
Just to comment on that, I know a number of you pop yourself in the chat as popping your hand up for that buddy service. So if you could please make sure that you do email us, because it might get lost in the chat once we close the session. So if you could please, if you have sort of signaled that you'd really appreciate that, if you could then also do that on the ewill@lhh.com so that we don't miss you out as we try to pair people up, that would be great.
Yeah. And we'll do that matching service for you.
Lovely comment there. Thanks for waking us up. Yes, I always feel awoken after I've delivered these sessions myself. Yes, indeed. They can be a sharp awakening at times. I'll come off slides because we aim to give you a few minutes back for those of you that need to dive off or want to refresh. But Colette and I are going to stay on, and there were some Q&A questions that we'll follow up. So if any of you have got any that we might have missed on the chat, then pop them in again. But let me have a look at, I'm just going to open up the Q&A and see if there's any Q&A. But if we, we'll see you next time if you're diving off, but please do stay if you'd like to. We'll keep it open until we've answered any questions. Question for, so some of these are easy to answer. So if I can't join one of the future sessions, will it be recorded and shared? So yes. Ugne has recorded the session, so we'll post those. Those will be available for sharing if you can't attend all of these sessions. So Colette, do we have any advice for setting up a women's internal networking group using things like Teams or Yammer? So yeah, we on our programs we use a WhatsApp group, don't we, for communications, and that works really effectively. So people can post successes on their WhatsApp group. They can post requests for help or what they're working on. So that works really well. Yeah, Teams would be another great option. But I'm not familiar with Yammer, but Teams certainly would work. And I think it just needs a little bit of input to get it going, in my experience, just somebody that's prepared to kind of share first and kind of get the tone. And then they do tend to start to be self-managing once people feel that they've made those connections.
Yeah, and what about if you are thinking about that, if you get a group of women together that might be interested, take the theme of one of our topics and maybe use that. I mean, it's always lovely to have a virtual group, grab a cup of tea or coffee and just start a conversation around the whole career activism area and what you've picked up from today. So you could run your own internal sessions based on some of these themes. Or, ask someone maybe more senior to join the group and just share their career. We often get speakers on our programme who just share their careers and why they've made moves and how they've made moves. And that's been really inspiring for women, hearing those stories and some of the challenges they've overcome. So those hopefully are some ideas of some simple things that you could do on your own, just informal network and get together. So we've got some questions about the recording.
We could pop up the slides. I've just seen in the chat. Can you put the email up again for the buddy scheme? So it's
ewill@lhh.com.
Yeah, so ewill@lhh.com. Thanks.
So let's have a look. There's another question here. How does advocating for change in your organisation work with being political savvy? Sometimes it feels you need to ruffle feathers to get things done. Yeah, and I mean, that is all part of that political awareness. So sometimes it is about knowing the moment when you need to stand up for things, particularly where there's a lot of change that isn't necessarily going to be popular. And it came up in the chat, actually. I noticed a little bit of conversation about it not necessarily feeling comfortable. And I would say one of the most important things that come out time and again in this session when we chat to women is about being politically savvy, but doing it authentically. So it's got to be right for you. It's got to be in accordance with your values.
Yeah.
And I often share an example of once where, I went to see my manager at the time, and he was, so orderly. You need to do this and you need to do that. You need to do it like this and you need to do it in this way. And I remember sort of saying to him, I said, well, look, I will do it, but I'm not going to do it like that, because that's not how I want to operate. And so I'll get it done, but I'm going to do it in a different way. And he was like, oh yeah, of course, he was trying to be helpful, but actually I had done some work and knew how I wanted to do it. So yes, advocate for change in all of these things, and thinking about being politically savvy, it does come back to how do you want to do it in a way that's right for you, is authentic and true to your values.
I think just to add to that, but there's another one I want to call out, but just to add, I think we always tend to make the mistake of misusing the word political to replace in our own head we hear manipulate. And we said earlier, I think political is understanding the mood music and what's going on, and how to kind of become part of that, get closer to it, as opposed to being political to manage in a manipulative way. It's about just joining some of those more subtleties of how things are being discussed, or how change is taking place, in order for you to join that and be part of that change. And the other one that I just caught my eye was about imposter syndrome, and how much do we come across that. And actually we hear it loud and clear, particularly in the session on strengthening confidence and resilience. We pay particular attention and call it out as a limiting self-belief that we do very much acknowledge women do experience more so than men. Not that men don't have those negative thoughts, but what we tend to find is women have them and hold on to them for longer. So they tend to get in the way more for longer, particularly if there's setbacks.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll cover more on that. We're going to look at lots of aspects of limiting beliefs on the next session on confidence and resilience. Let me just, I saw something on here that I thought was interesting. Someone said, it was something about, yes. I have mixed feelings on why still women need to be trained for gender bias. Is it our behaviour, traits at work, really, I would say. And, I think this is, fair. And often a lot of women ask the conversation. I would say suspend disbelief, because when women come together on these programs, it really is about, it's not a pity party or a moan. It's really about what are the challenges that we're facing and how could we overcome them. It's definitely not fix the woman. It's about what are the challenges that are specific to us that we might be facing, and how do we then work out ways to get around those, or in effect initiate change ourselves around some of those things. But it really is about raising awareness and getting that support for awareness. So that I wouldn't say that these programs are about training women at all. It's about creating an environment to talk about what are the things that are important to us. And not everything will resonate with every woman. As we go through a program, different topics resonate more with some women than others. But it's about helping us all understand what are some of those headwinds. And there are so many times, conversation after conversation where people go, oh, so that's why I wish I'd known this earlier and I could have made different choices. That's really what it's about.
And I think, we, to your point, Orla, we experience everybody as coming with their own truth. And so it's not about saying there's one leadership blueprint for women in leadership to be successful. So we have, women who join these programs who are perceived as being aggressive and masculine and portraying all the traditional traits of leadership that are expected, and yet they are struggling with different headwinds and being critiqued for not being authentic because that's their leadership style, and actually that is their authentic self. And yet we have other women who join for whom actually compassion and empathy are not being recognised as leadership qualities, And yet we've seen lots in the research after the pandemic that tells us actually those are the very qualities in certain situations that are going to get the best out of teams and crises. So it's not that we're trying to say that there is one way to be a leader, but it's helping women to arrive at what's going to make the difference for them in moving ahead, and what are some of the challenges they're facing in their context.
Yeah, lovely. And just linked to that, there's another on the Q&A. We have really mixed feedback from women about setting up women's networks or specific women in leadership sessions. Some feel it patronising. I think that's true. I think it's each woman's different and have different points in their careers. So it's got to be about the timings right, and it's definitely got to be about choice. Most of the women who come on our programmes talk about they're at a point in their careers where they're feeling stuck. It's very often that's the point where we go, I need some help, I'm feeling a bit stuck, you know, lost a bit of direction. I think I did see that on some of the chat. That would be a perfect time to get that support and help that a Women in Leadership programme can bring to help unlock and help women move forward. But not every woman needs that. So it is about choice. We've definitely had some programmes where the organisation has said, you know, that would be good for you, you go on it. And of course it's not, you know, they're not ready for it, it's not right for them, they don't need it maybe. So there's definitely got to be a choice around it and self-nomination. I think we're out of time there, sadly. I think we've got most of the questions, and we can always, we'll obviously cover another Q&A session at the next session, but thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week. So if we missed your question, we are sorry, and you can drop us a note, as Colette said, in ewill@lhh.com if you want a personal reply from either of us, but if not, we will also have a bit of time at the next session as well. So thank you so much for joining us,
everybody.
We'll see you next Monday for Strengthening Confidence and Resilience.